So back in 2019, I decided to sit for the C1 exam in Catalan. And honestly, my reason for doing this was that I was just feeling stuck in a rut with the language. The months that I spent studying for this exam, along with the help of a professional teacher, were completely eye-opening for me. Nowadays, I can without a doubt say that Catalan is my second language. I depend on it every single day as a communication tool.
Pues aquesta panaderia que tenim darrere m'encanten. Tenen uns croissants brutals, realment tots els pastissos i tal que fan són tots molt bons. I believe that the owner is actually French, if I'm not mistaken.
So as a Catalan learner, I'm really fortunate to get to live in the country where it's spoken. But, you know, actually, a lot of my greatest advances in the language came when I wasn't living here. So if it's your goal to speak English naturally, even if you can't travel to an English-speaking country, well, I'll show you some exercises that I found really helpful so that you can start doing it right now. So basically, you need to go through 3 stages. First off, learn the words that you actually need. Second, loosen up your tongue. And third, stop translating in your head. Now, this process is a lot of fun, but don't be fooled. It's definitely not for slackers. How do I know this? Well, to answer that question, we have to go back 10 years to when I first started learning Catalan. So when I moved to Barcelona, I made Catalan friends here. And the thing is here is that everyone is bilingual. So oftentimes if I was with a group of my Catalan friends, they'd be speaking Catalan together. And I didn't want to be the person that they had to switch to Spanish for. You know, as an English learner, you are so lucky because you have countless learning resources. Just with Hollywood and even with British entertainment, there's so many series, movies, tons of music, and so much more. But in a language with just 9 million speakers, like Catalan, there's a lot less. So one of the good things that this actually brought for me is it required a lot of patience. For example, the first time I watched a series, it didn't have any subtitles on it.
Bon dia, nois. Em dic Marlí.
And so I really just had to push through and keep watching it. And at first, I felt like I understood almost nothing. I could just catch some words. But once I started getting used to the characters' voices and my ear kind of got attuned to the music of the language, I was able to just understand a ton more. So that patience was really key there. Something else that was really important was being really curious. So I needed to observe how natives pronounce things, you know, either be it when I was with my friends or if I was watching a TV series or listening to a song, I would really try to hone in not just on the meaning of the words, but actually like the musicality and how certain sounds and certain words were pronounced. You know, I first moved here to Catalonia back in 2013, and I was living here for about a year in Barcelona, and that's when I first started picking up the language. And a really big part of it for me was not only wanting to learn the language, but being really fascinated by the culture and wanting to be able to understand that culture as a native does. Now, this was so important because that curiosity that I had built motivated me even when I moved away from here. After living here for a year, I moved to Chile, for example, where they only speak Spanish. But because I had that fascination and that connection to the culture, I was able to really design a life in which I was surrounded by the language all the time, even though I wasn't in a country where that language was spoken. So I had this routine to live the language. Like in the morning, I would go for a run and I would listen to music in Catalan while I was running. I would come back and take a shower, and then I would listen to the radio in Catalan. And it was already like the midday radio with the time difference. While I was preparing my breakfast. And at the end of the day, I would either watch a series. I watched all of Dragon Ball in Catalan, which is called Bola de Drac. And I also, you know, would read books in Catalan. I would connect with friends sometimes, and I even used the website Couchsurfing to make Catalan friends that were living in Santiago, so I could sometimes meet up with people there and continue practicing the language. So as you can see, even if you're not living in a country, you really have no excuse not to practice the language, especially when it comes to English. So as you saw, speaking Catalan confidently for me meant that I was able to naturally communicate with my friends and connect with the culture. So how about you? What would it mean for you to be able to speak English as naturally as you speak your mother tongue? So at this point, you might be asking yourself, Ethan, why should I even go through all this trouble? Now, it is really challenging, but it works. So to help me show you how to do that, I've invited 3 non-native English learners just like you to help me go through a routine that's really going to do wonders for you to be able to speak English more confidently and naturally. But before we jump into that, I wanted to also let you know that if you watch until the end, we have a special gift for you.
So do you feel like you can describe your thoughts and ideas in English as easily as you can in your native language? Or do you sometimes feel like you're using the same words over and over again? Well, Humbert, who is from Venezuela originally and currently lives in Argentina, is going to share some of what he did to avoid that. So, Humbert, on to you.
Well, thank you, Ethan, for inviting me. So I'm gonna show you a couple of tricks and tips that I have learned through my English speaking journey. So here we go.
So every day, go to a different place. It can be a different room in your house, a place nearby that you want to check out, a different room, or your own workplace or your old school, and so on. Observe the place for about a minute. You can set the timer on your phone and focus on the details of that place. The furniture, the electronics that people use, the people, the actions they do, the colors. When the minute is up, set another timer for 1 minute and write everything you can remember from your observation. And here's where it gets interesting. If you already know those things in English, you should write them in English. If you don't know how to write them in English or you don't know those words, you should write them on your mother tongue. It's okay to mix up both languages. After the minute is up, go to a dictionary and find out what those things are called in English. That's not all. Review your list. Next, you can close your eyes and visualize the same scene, only now entirely in English.
Now let's do it together. Look at this image that I recorded from my window. Set a timer for 1 minute on your phone. What do you see? Pay attention to the whole scene. What are the elements that you can see in this image? Focus on the colors, objects, places, and people. Take notes of keywords in English and in your native language. Now that the minute is up, look up the words that you don't know. You can even pause the video here if you need. Now that you have the words, close your eyes and visualize the scene in your mind and try to describe it. Something like this. So I see a motorbike going past, I see a taxi stopping, and it looks like it's dropping someone off. Now there's a bunch of cars going by, there's a truck, there's a bunch of green trees, there's appears to be no wind today. There's some tall buildings in the background. How cool would it be if you could visit a different corner of the world and do an exercise like this? Just imagine, you could be describing a busy square in Italy, or maybe your favorite restaurant in India, or how about even a beautiful beach in South America? Well, with the RealLife English app, you can take a step towards becoming a global citizen and connect with people from different countries, discover different cultures every single day. Plus, you'll take your listening to the next level with weekly podcast lessons. And of course, you get intelligent vocabulary flashcards so you never forget the new words that you learn. So what are you waiting for? You can try it absolutely free by downloading it in your favorite app store or simply click up here or down the description below now. It's so frustrating to know a language, but to feel like your tongue's tied every time that you try to speak. It's like having this invisible barrier between you and the person that you know that you can become in this language, or the communication that you know that you could have with it. So I invited Thiago, who has mastered American pronunciation, to share an exercise with you that's really going to help you to speak a lot more naturally.
Hey Ethan, hey everyone. So there are two sounds that can be quite tricky to master in English, the TH sound and the T sound. So let's practice by warming up a little bit. We can start with the lip trill. The lip trill can be voiced or unvoiced. Voiced, you can go, right? And voiceless, you can go, right? Just to get your mouth a little bit more relaxed. Now, something else you can do is start moving your tongue from side to side. Your tongue, right? Just to get the tongue a little bit more articulated and ready for action. So, you can also do a yawn. You can go, right? Or like that. Imagine you are tired or just waking up, yeah? And one final exercise you can do is kind of just stretch your mouth a little bit, like you are almost smiling, but not really. Like, you see, like that? And then back to neutral position. So we have two TH sounds in English, voiceless TH and voiced TH. Here's voiceless. So the tip of your tongue is between your upper and bottom teeth, and then you just push air out, right? This is the sound we see in words like through and three and something, anything. Now voice TH. It's the same position, the tongue between the teeth, but now I use my voice. So I go zzz, zzz, zzz. You see, I'm using my voice. It vibrates here, my vocal cords. Zzz. So that's the sound we see in words like father, mother, either, neither. Got it? Now in American English, we also have the flap T, which is this ra 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 sound. It's not really a T that we say, but it's a ra ra. My tongue flaps, right? So instead of saying water, we say water, right? Water, ra ra, water. And this is very useful for connections. For example, at 8 o'clock becomes at 8 o'clock. At 8 o'clock. You see, I'm using the flap T sound. At 8 o'clock. At 8 o'clock. Okay? So let's practice the TH sound now with a tongue twister. I have the tongue twister right here next to me, so let's do it. They thankfully think this thing is the best thing that they can throw the 3 times they need to throw a thing. All right? So let's try a little bit faster now. They thankfully think. They thankfully think. This thing is the best thing. This thing is the best thing that they can throw. That they can throw. The 3 times. The 3 times they need to throw a thing. They need to throw a thing. So the result here would sound something like this. Let me read it here. They thankfully think this thing is the best thing that they can throw the 3 times they need to throw a thing. Wow. So now to conclude our pronunciation mini lesson, let's do another tongue twister, but this time with the flap T. Da da da. So I have it right here. Let's do it slowly first. Listen and repeat. Betty bought a bit of butter. Betty bought a bit of butter. But the bit of butter Betty bought was bitter. But the bit of butter Betty bought was bitter. So Betty bought a better bit of butter. So Betty bought a better bit of butter to make the bitter butter better. To make the bitter butter better. So the result of this would sound something like this. Betty bought a bit of butter, but the bit of butter Betty bought was bitter. So Betty bought a better bit of butter to make the bitter butter better. Is that right?
That was great, Thiago. Thanks so much. And by the way, if you would like to know more about Thiago's journey and how he got that near native-like English without ever traveling to or living in an English-speaking country, well, we have a great lesson coming out for you very soon where he's going to share the exact steps that he took to get to where he is today so that you can do the same. So to make sure that you don't miss out on that new lesson, all you have to do is hit that subscribe button and the bell down below, and that way YouTube will send you a notification when it comes out. So next, I'm going to have Ksenia from Ukraine actually demonstrate an exercise that's really fantastic for breaking the bad habit of translating in your head. Now, why is this a bad habit? Well, first off, it really can slow you down and hold you back from properly being able to participate in a conversation. You'll completely miss your timings. And the other thing is that it can have you stuck kind of translating structures or expressions from your native language, which can make you sound not so natural. In the first exercise, which Humbert demonstrated, the goal was to use everyday situations to learn new words. You had time to think, research, and prepare to speak. But now, Ksenia is going to show you how to think in English. You'll activate the vocabulary you have by speaking freely. There's no preparation, and the focus is on actions, on what's happening at the scene in front of you. All right, so Ksenia, what does that exercise look like?
Hey Ethan, hey there. Well, we know that kids can simply think in another language without forcing it, without translating it in their heads, right? Mira, we have donuts.
Donuts? Yummy.
Jakiej ty obraź?
I'm in a cherry.
And what about a grown-up like you and me? Well, I like doing something called freestyle speaking. Just like this, I observe my surroundings, set a timer on my phone, and try to describe everything I see. If I don't know a word, I work around that and do my best just to explain what I see. So I'm having my coffee, and Mira is eating hot dog. People are standing in the line. That cozy cafe offers wonderful waffles and really nice coffee. That's our favorite park. Other kids are running around. If you have some free time, look around and describe what you see in English.
All right, now it's your turn. If you record yourself and listen back later to correct yourself, that's a plus. So do you remember when you learned your native language? I imagine you actually don't, but you can probably think about how it went. So you didn't translate, you didn't care so much about making grammatical mistakes. If you've ever watched kids, they tend to make them all the time, and it's not until we actually get into school that we learn to iron those out. And you probably also didn't know if something was right or wrong unless you actually tried to say it, right? When you're learning a language, and this was totally true for me in learning Catalan, you really have to be patient and trust the process. You know, some days it might feel like you're not making any progress at all, but then all of a sudden you might feel like you've made a big leap in the language. And maybe you'll have a bad day where you feel like you can't speak it, and other days you'll have a day where you can't believe how fluent you are. It's all part of the process, so just be patient. So I want to challenge you to try out the exercises that you learned today every single day, maybe for a week, and you're going to be shocked at the progress that you're able to make, and you're going to feel so much more natural when you're speaking English, all right? And as promised, we have a really neat study guide for you to download that's going to help you to continue to practice and put into use everything that you've learned today. So just click up here or down the description below to download that now for free. Ah, yeah.
Hey, I'm so happy you came over to practice your English with me again. Remember the last time you were here, we said we would cook together? Well, how would you feel about baking a cake and having some tea with me? Sound good? Come in, let's do it. Okay, so while the cake is in the oven, I'll explain how we'll practice today. Just as we did previously, I prepared